Hello, hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the last session before lunch. I'm very excited to be moderating this panel focused on security and data protection. A little while ago, I ran a poll that focused on if you could look at the blockchain trilemma and you had a choice between security, decentralization, and scalability, which one would you choose? I know in reality that's not how things actually play out. You're always going to have all three. But if you had a choice, which one would you choose? And fairly unanimously, about 70% of the people who responded said security. So the good news for you guys is at least 70% of your audience care what we're talking about today. Everybody else is here for really fast Solana. But for everybody else, we're going to try and share some insider knowledge, some war stories, some what keeps us up at night when it comes to the matter of security for institutions, for individuals. We also want to talk importantly about data protection and privacy, something that I think is probably underappreciated in the area of blockchain. We love blockchain for its decentralization. We love it for its transparency. But too much transparency can be a bad thing. And certainly from an institutional perspective, having on-chain data present and visible for all, business operational data, transactional data, is something that is deeply scary. And so being able to go a little bit deeper on data protection is something we also want to cover. So let's get started. I'd like the gents just to give us a couple of minutes at the beginning on their credentials in security, because you have three very different individuals in terms of their backgrounds and what they're working on. So I'll start with you, Jûrgen. Give us just a little bit of your background and your security credentials for this audience, please.
Hi, I'm Jûrgen, CTO of SafeTech Labs. I'm also a consultant in the European Parliament and dealing with cybersecurity infrastructure needs on security level. I'm here present with my company Inherity, which is basically a project related to digital inheritance and decentralized backups of your secret data.
All right. Kees, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Hello. My name is Taieb. I'm working for Crédit Agricole. My security background comes from far. I was a telecommunication engineer focusing on security at that moment. Now I'm coordinating the digital asset, that crypto asset project within the group, actually.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Navin.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm Navin Gupta, CEO of Crystal Intelligence. We are a blockchain analytics firm. And simply put, we take fraud out of crypto. So two things we do. One, we do transaction monitoring so that bad people are not using cryptos for any wrong purposes. And then second, we do a lot of investigations on when bad things happen in post-mortem, how to bring that money back.
There we go. So we have the institution that wants to face the customers. We have the technology provider who wants to provide technology to the institutions. And we have the investigations team who will figure out what happened after the fact. So we've got the full spectrum of activity when it comes to security and privacy on the show today. What I'd love to start with is, what are the things that keep you up at night? What is the one kind of major concern when it comes to security, when it comes to Web3, use of blockchains, cryptocurrencies in the world that probably are underappreciated maybe, or at least are crunchy and difficult at this point in time? Guys, I'll start with you at the beginning of the supply chain. From the bank's perspective, what are the main areas of focus or the things that you worry about the most?
Yeah. So as the systemic banks are joining this adventure and working more and more on the digital asset, on blockchains, on cryptos, I think risk management for security is a major issue. They were building and mastering a lot of processes to manage the risk, the security risk, on traditional asset, on traditional ways to make finance. Now, when we are facing blockchains and decentralized world, they need to change their minds and need to enhance these processes and how to manage security. I say that take some examples today. When you go to the analysis, risk analysis for security from banks, you will look about integrity, you look about robustness, you look about all these kind of things from IT perspective mainly. You'll see you need to have backups on systems. You need to have, and the question now, if you look at blockchains, what does it mean, backup on blockchains? How do you manage that? So this is one of the questions. You are more about, let's say, how your system is working with decentralized situation where the governance, you don't manage it, or you are not able to know how it works. what are your dependencies on the system? And this is another security issue that you want to look at. On the other side, you have all the technical issues that comes with the smart contracts and the way that the integrity of the information is managed. So are you able to use whatever kind of smart contracts? Do you need to manage them? And the information which is put on these smart contracts, do you put it open for everybody? Are you allowed to put it open for everybody? And how do you manage these kind of things? I think these areas are major stuff. And then the future also is something we need to look at when you see all the evolution of quantum cryptography that could harm some systems, and this on another side of security that we need to look at it as well.
There we go. And in very, very few of the things you mentioned there is actually the security of the blockchain itself, right? We didn't even talk about the nodes and whether the blockchain itself can get hacked. And in reality, over the last few years, a number of the main instances of issues or breaches haven't been the chain. It's been other parts next to it or other parts of the supply chain. So we'll get into that in a minute. Jûrgen obviously is somebody who's also building infrastructure or advising on building infrastructure. What are the things that keep you up at night as you're trying to face or trying to reassure your clients on using blockchain technology?
Well, in my case, it's directly related to the project I'm working on. It's to safely, in all transparency, securely secure your digital footprint, and to transfer to your next kin or to back up for yourself, because security is nothing when you don't look at it. How do you securely store your keys to access those security layers, right? And it all starts with, we are always circling back to the same point. We need to have segmentation of responsibilities at each level of the development chain.
Yeah, key management's a good one. And I guess as individuals, we've all got a piece of paper somewhere or something we've scratched onto a piece of metal that we've hidden under the bed. And that's our approach to managing our keys. But those are our keys. And what happens when our spouse, our partner, our friends, somebody else in the company we work for where those assets exist have access to that, or require access to that, right? We're very good maybe at individual privacy and individual security of our assets, but I guess it becomes a little bit more challenging when you've got institutional decision making, when you've got crypto assets that an organization owns and the CEO gets fired the next day. How does the key management chain of custody work? How do you make sure that you've got a number of people responsible for managing the keys, but not too many that it becomes you have to fly 3 people in from 6 different countries to be able to make it work? Much too complicated. So the user experience around that, I think we still have work on. Navin, you get to see the other end. Usually kind of something bad has happened and therefore you're brought in. What are some of the biggest concerns that you see, or what are the biggest risks that you're brought in to help with?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's first just quickly look at through the numbers, right? Anybody in this room who has not been attempted scam, who has not received a WhatsApp or something like that, trying to scam them or trying to link your wallet to anything else? Anybody who has not been?
Not been.
Not been. Even a single person.
All right.
Not a single person. And this something tells us about the state of crypto market that we are in. So let's just look at the numbers itself. We issue something called as a hacks and scam report. In 2022, just the reported scams and hacks were $20 billion US. And that is just a small fraction of what the total number of hacks and scams happen. And I'm rounding up the number just for everybody's ease. $5 billion of those are security flaws. That means something goes wrong in the system, which could have easily been fixed. 5 billion of those are DeFi hacks, right? And almost the rest of them are just scams where somebody's impersonating somebody and trying to get money from you, right? Some of the top ones, Axie Infinity, anybody knows that, $600 million. FTX, $600 million. After FTX was going bankrupt, somebody drained money out of FTX and essentially took the money from the wallets, right? Number 1 country in terms of reporting scams and hacks, United States. In terms of volume, right? Number of cases reported. Total value from a country that has been lost. Just anybody wants to take a guess. Total value of money being lost reported by a country is China, right? Billions of dollars being lost. And again, Wu token, plus token, almost in billions of dollars of scams that are essentially happening there. So it's far more prevalent than we think. It's prevalent at a country level, at an institution level, at an individual level, right? And to me, there's some things can be fixed, something cannot be fixed, in which the industry needs to move forward. But I think the state that we are in is actually quite pathetic. Right.
It's a little bit Wild Westy, or rather, I mean, the examples you mentioned there, again, it's important to cite that these are not blockchain hacks. The Axie Infinity hack was a bridge hack. So there was an insecurity around the bridge smart contract, which was exploited. FTX was institutional-wide corruption and failure and inappropriate controls. That's one that we all know, but unfortunately, as an industry, we get to suffer from the fallout of that. It's like FTX happened, oh, blockchain's the problem, right? A bridge gets hacked, blockchain's the problem. Blockchains are no longer secure. The reality is it's the supply chain around the blockchains that are the challenge, and this is where we need to work on. Navin, is there a favorite hack that you come back to from time to time where you can illustrate the learnings for people here that they can take something away?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody heard of the WazirX hack? $230 million lost a couple of months ago? No? Nobody's heard of it. $230 million actually doesn't matter much.
Maybe this is part of the problem. Maybe security doesn't have a good enough marketing team.
True. So in the WazirX hack, what happened, as you know, $230 million of investors' fund, customer funds, essentially got drained out of the wallet. The scamsters, it was a multi-sig wallet, but scamsters were able to overtake 4 multi-sig accounts by making changes in the smart contracts. And it was with an outside custody provider, and they were able to drain the wallets for $230 million. And after that, of course, the money has gone in lots of sources. It's gone into Tornado Cash. It's gone into multiple other places to be washed and to be sent out for different other purposes. But again, this is a place, a sophisticated exchange with huge amount of money from the customers, but at the same time having lost all that money and now essentially battling it out in the court. So this is one of my favorite investigations that we are constantly looking at. And to me, I think the chances of getting money is actually very, very low, right?
And what could they have done better? If you're looking retrospectively at what happened, what was the failure point, or what were some of the good practices that should have been instituted that maybe weren't?
Yeah. So there is 4 things that we essentially see. I'll just talk at a high level and then come down to the specific case. First, a lot of people don't realize lots of this is a work of insiders, right? So FTX, for example, most likely was an insider who essentially drained this particular wallet, right? So lots of time, the practices and the processes that are being followed in those institutions is at a very, very low level, right? A lot of these institutions grew up from an Excel sheet. So they were just using an Excel sheet to manage all their cryptos, and essentially money belongs to each one of you, and then essentially lost that money, and then everybody shrugs their shoulders and blames it on somebody else and walks away, right? I think I would say the third thing that I would say is lots of them are unregulated. So let's assume money does get lost. There is no place where customers can essentially go in and essentially get their money back, and also they're uninsured, right? So, and the last thing that I would say is there is no bit of audit that essentially happens. So, as you know, in regular practices, like for example, if we look at institutions like a bank, there is a huge amount of hacking, ethical hacking that essentially happens. There is a huge amount of audit that essentially happens, security audits, compulsory audits. But whereas, for example, for crypto institutions, a lot of time that doesn't happen. So the ability to essentially catch them is very, very difficult. But I would say the top ones is really an insider job. And then the second one is lack of culture and processes in the institution to be able to protect themselves from it.
So another version of don't trust, verify, trust no one. I want to move on to data protection and privacy next. So Kais, I'm going to come to you. We love, or one of the benefits of blockchain that is frequently cited is transparency, visibility, can't be evil. You can see the code, you can see the data, everything is visible and transparent. That's often cited. At the same time, you've also got open source, open platforms, the ability for anybody to innovate on top of these systems, which allows us to create applications or allows us to create innovations around financial services in a way that fintech probably can't up until now. And that's hugely exciting. The transparency part still scares people. And so being able to have all of your order book, all of your previous transactions, all of your interactions with smart contracts be visible and transparent on chain all of the time, I imagine for bank or for institutional clients or for investors even, is not something necessarily they're entirely comfortable with. Where are you guys as a bank in terms of data protection, the requirement for shielding certain parts of that transaction data? Because if we just went pure Ethereum all the time right now, that'd be a struggle.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. This is basically a big question that all the banks and all the institutions are looking to. When you look at it from a historical point of view, the first applications that banks has looked to or institution looked to was based on consortium, private consortium, local development, and there was no way to get into public blockchains or public infrastructures. Now we are feeling that more and more of these institutions, even supranational institutions, are looking to public infrastructures and public blockchains. The reason is very simple. Public blockchains are more robust. They are less suffering from many problems of consortium. And all this kind of open infrastructure is key. So how to manage this? And you're right. Transparency sometimes is not something that you could bring when it comes to customer data, transactions, and all this stuff. Also, you have all the regulator constraints. GDPR, for example, is a big piece of data, let's say, management that you need to cover as a bank because you are not allowed to share this data of your client. From a business perspective, I don't think that the clients from banks or any other institutions wants to their competitors to look at their transactions and to keep track of it on a history or whatever. So these are two things that are not really very online. So what happens today is that all the actors are looking to how to manage security and how to encrypt some data on a public blockchains, for example, and the way that only people who need to know will know about it. And this is one of the more, I would say, discussions that we are doing with a lot of actors. Basically, you still have the blockchain or layer one or whatever custody or settlement way, which is working. And now you need to build applications, you need to build rollups or layer two or whatever, where you manage the confidentiality, you manage the data that you don't want to make it open for everybody, and still benefit from the open infrastructure, still benefit from the open systems, and for, let's say, the robustness of a public infrastructure that is open to everybody, and everybody could manage the smart contract to see how it works and reduce somehow the risk of corruption of this kind of things.
Got you. So we're on the journey. Jûrgen, I'll come to you as well. As I said, Kais has kind of outlined, we've got a spectrum from fully private shielded chains that could be public. We've got fully private DLTs, LAN parties where you have consortium chains, and you have fully transparent public blockchains. In your engagement with European Parliament and others, where do you stand on whether this blockchain infrastructure is fit for purpose at the moment for data protection and privacy?
Well, that's a difficult one, right? In my case, for Inherity, for instance, we use a public blockchain of your choosing, for the simple reason that it's almost community driven, right? Everybody can pop up a node, so you have the immutable aspects of your data that you want to protect. That's what we do. We use blockchain as a storage layer. We encrypt the data, so transparency. It's only transaction-wise that we need the transparency, but not the data itself. It's encrypted. So for that part, we can go public. If you go to a private blockchain, you have to deal again with, who's going to deal with that one, right? So you have to draw the middle line, which use case and where you want to use.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I mean, Kais talked about what happens in a post-quantum world, and if we are encrypting data on-chain today, can that data be decrypted at a later stage? You know, it's a level of comfort, right? It's a spectrum. From a personal perspective, I work for a project called Midnight. What we're looking at is, rather than having encrypted data on-chain, the use of zero-knowledge proofs. So a fundamental concept is send proofs of data, not the data itself. Keep the information on the client server, generate the proof on the client server, and pass that proof to the smart contract. So we can create a world on-chain with blockchains where none of the sensitive data ever leaves the client side. It can remain on-premise, not even on cloud. Back to the traditional banking infrastructure, but at this point in time, zero knowledge probably is a generation of blockchain which I think regulators probably aren't experienced with using, banks are just getting up to speed with. And I think we've still got a little bit of time, right? First generation, we created Bitcoins. We had a decentralized network. That's exciting. Then we added programmability with Ethereum and so on and so forth. We added a small amount of interoperability with chains like Cosmos, Polkadot, Cardano, and some others that were starting to create movement of assets between chains. But we never really solved for data protection and privacy. So something I think for the audience to look out for is starting to see more discussion around on-chain programmable data protection. Maybe less encryption on a generation 2 public chain, but how do we use a generation 4 roll-up layer 2 or main chain that has some of these capabilities built in? I think it's an interesting journey of discovery, but it still feels new. I remember talking about zero knowledge at conferences in 2017, thinking, oh my God, this is really exciting. This is going to change everything. And here we are in 2024, and it still hasn't changed anything yet. It takes time, but it's progress, right?
There is a lot of progress on zero knowledge proof architecture and protocols, but we still enhancing things. If you can look at it from a historical point of view, when we started work on clouds from institution or whoever, we were very fearing this kind of things. We better put all the infrastructure local, don't use local servers. Cloud is a little bit not secure and this kind of things. And then we started to get why not to buy or to rent a piece of this cloud and make it for ourselves. Now we on the blockchains applications, we are going in the same area. In the beginning, we wanted to make all the infrastructure local or consortium or whatever, it's closed. When you are going to public blockchains, you need to look at it a little bit different. You need to see that today the information needs to be managed outside of your system. You need to be able to make calculation, make operations on the information outside of your system. And from a technology point of view, we are there. When you look at things like FHA is full homomorphic encryptions, or a lot of things that are happening from mathematical point of view, that you are able to manage encrypted data without knowing the data itself. You are able to make some operations on data encrypted without knowing what is the data inside, which is a few years ago, it's something is a kind of magic. Now you are able to do it, and you are able to put some data on let's say a public area, public cloud, whatever, and bring someone to make calculations, make whatever the operation on it, without he knows anything about what is in this data, which is great. And this kind of evolution is kind of the future of the use of blockchains in the public domains. And we see that these things are still developing. It's a lot of research area, but this is the next 2, 3, 4 years that we will see the benefits of these things.
Lots to be excited for. We couldn't come to a European blockchain convention and not talk about regulation. Mika has been getting quite a lot of airtime on the conference so far, so we'll do a brief nod to it, because I think it's something from a European perspective that we should look at as a competitive advantage, but also possibly not. And Navin, I'm going to come to you. We both sat and enjoyed a panel this morning with Bitpanda, a team of lawyers, and crypto finance, talking specifically about the requirements on exchanges, custodians, and a number of other financial institutions around crypto assets, digital assets, and setting a high bar, which can be a good thing, but at the same time, the additional security requirements may be challenging in a decentralized and global industry. What's your take on the implications of Mika for security professionals and being able to advance the industry?
So I think first I just want to start at a high level, right? Like, first of all, we all in this room want to be protected, right? So at a market level, the way we want to be protected is against manipulation, that somebody is not manipulating the price of Ethereum, Bitcoin, or any of the top assets, or even a smaller asset that we are buying, right? So in this way, regulation is good, because what it essentially tells you is, hey, if you're going to manipulate the market, there'll be a price that you need to pay, right? So that's again at the market level. And then you come at each institution level, like you're talking about, custody providers, exchanges. Are they following the best in breed systems and processes? And is the customer here in the room insured, right? Is he or she sure not only their processes are good, but just in case something was to happen, there is some reserves, and the customer funds and the proprietary funds of the exchange are not getting intermingled, right? Like, so there are a number of processes around it, right? And then the last part that's essentially comes in, if something goes bad, is there enforcement? Is there investigation service that's out there which are essentially able to get back the funds, right? In terms of enforcement of some of those actions, right? So to me, all these three things Mika brings together, but what also it does is it tilts the scale in favor of bigger firms, right? Because only bigger firms, for example, institutions like banks, institutions which are able to raise very significant amount of money, and maybe there needs to be a slowing in graduate process because you have institutions that have been used to an Excel macro, and have been running their business on that for whatever reason. And you need to have a graduation path, and maybe that graduation path is through some outsourcing services, working with bigger partners to be essentially be able to get there. But overall, Mika is hugely welcome. And the other thing that needs to be done is just to make sure that Mika not only applies to institutions that are operating within Europe, but also institutions that are outside of Europe, because otherwise it'll become useless because people will go outside and essentially do their business.
Yeah, it's really good having a very high wall and a high castle out here, but if all of your customers are going outside to a lower regulated or more accessible or better user experience, also you risk losing talent.
Yeah, and regulatory arbitrage, right? I mean, you just have to make sure that doesn't happen.
Canada lost Ethereum to Switzerland because of better regulation and better regulatory user experience. That would be the 5th largest company in the history of Canada if Ethereum still remained where it was originally created. So some lessons learned for regulators is that this is a large industry. It's only growing and growing at a rapid pace. Don't dissuade the innovators. So with a couple of minutes left, I'm going to ask each of my panelists to give one area of focus or one tip for you guys as an audience when it comes to security and data protection to take away. I'll start with you, Jûrgen. If there's one thing you'd like this audience to take away from this session or in the area of data protection and security, what would you want it to be?
Maybe for those willing to create their own dApps, or having their own development company, I would suggest that they do proper segregation of responsibilities. You can't allow a full stack dev also deploy your infrastructure. You need to have a real segmentation of responsibilities in between the key players of your development company, basically. Because inside jobs that you were referring to before, most of them could be prevented if you have a strategy in place to have those policies written up.
That's a good one. Kais, one thing from you?
Yeah, maybe to come back to the risk and kind of risk that needs really to be really managed is that this technology or those technologies are really very fast moving. The things are moving very, very fast, and for institutions and even for others to follow this evolution, you need to be you need to predict many things, and you need to be aware of what will happen in the next few years, from months, because things are really moving very, very fast. And if you just keep your systems working as 10 years ago, where evolution needs 1 year, 2 years to be implemented, you will not manage anything. So basically, the thing that you need to put in mind that these things are evolving very, very fast, need to manage that from a higher level, need to have all the process that could be adopted very quickly. And this the only way to manage this new security gaps or security issues and all of these kind of things.
So, Anthony, my message will be to the foundations, because today they represent everybody in this room and they have a seat at the table in most of the ecosystems, right? The foundations need to take this forward in terms of better infrastructure, hugely scalable and security apparatus behind all the chains that they're being part of. Because that's one place who can force the shift to happen to make sure that we all stay safe and crypto can become a much, much better world versus where it is today.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience for joining us. Thank you to my 3 panelists. Give them a big round of applause. Thank you. And you guys can go have some lunch. And we're going to stay for the obligatory selfie on stage, because Victoria and Daniel did say that we have to do lots of social media engagement. So we are going to have